We are glad to have on the phone with us Florida Senator and Republican presidential candidate Marco Rubio. Senator, welcome. Good to have you this morning. First of all, I know you put out a statement, but as more of this has seeped in and been revealed, what's your reaction to all this?
Well, first, specifically, the broader point, this is a civilizational war. I mean, this is a civilizational conflict. This is not a geopolitical grievance that these people have with us. This is basically, they believe the entire world needs to believe in what they believe in, or you die. That's what they believe, and this is a part of it. We need to begin to confront it as that. There's no accommodation with them. They don't just want to govern the Middle East. They want to govern the world. They believe the entire world must live under the laws and the rules of their particular interpretation of Islam, and they are willing to kill people to carry that out, and so this is certainly a part of it. As far as ISIS is concerned, the true nature of ISIS I've been warning about for a long time. They are in Syria, of course, and they are in Iraq. They are a growing presence in Libya. For more than a year, I've been talking about how they became the predominant jihadist group in Libya, how they'd use it to conduct attacks in the Sinai and eventually into Europe as well. They are now growing in influence in Afghanistan. They are in an open competition with the Taliban. They're starting to pop up in Pakistan, which is scary because that's a nuclear power country. This is a country with nuclear weapons. And eventually you're going to see them move into Lebanon. You're going to see them strike into Saudi Arabia and into Jordan and beyond. And one last point I would make about these attacks. What will be interesting to learn is, were these directed by ISIS? In essence, were these individuals sent for the purpose of conducting attacks? Or were these individuals inspired online to take action? But in essence, these were self-directed cells that drew inspiration from ISIS and the teachings of ISIS and the information that ISIS makes available, but did they self-start on it? Did they go out and decide to do it independent of central command? Because that's one of the things that's made ISIS so hard to deal with. It's not like the head of the caliphate makes a phone call and says, you know, conduct attacks.
Right.
These are kind of entrepreneurial attackers, in essence, and that, of course, is the threat we face here in the homeland.
And obviously the details about that will be coming out. This appears be a more organized cell, and it appears, at least by some of the indications that we have so far, to have been something that was mapped out and potentially trained for in Syria. But my mind goes to the attack on the beach in Tunisia, on the museums. You know, this is nothing new, but we are seeing an escalation of this. Right. We're seeing larger attacks. We saw the plane that went down, the Russian plane that went down over Egypt. You know, and as you point out, you deal with the sort of larger, you know, sort of philosophical bent, religious bent that is at work here. But then you got to deal with getting rid of these attacks. You got to deal with getting these people before they can get us. And, you know, what do you think? What should we be doing as a country? What more muscle can we show?
Well, you have to target their safe havens. This all begins with the fact that they have safe havens from which to operate. Al-Qaeda conducted 9/11 because they had a safe haven in Afghanistan given to them by the Taliban. And ISIS has created a safe haven in Libya. They've created safe havens in parts of Syria and obviously increasingly in Iraq, but particularly in Libya. The ISIS presence in Libya is quite significant. It is a function of the vacuum that was left behind in Libya when that civil war just took way too long to conclude. It led to all these militias. They took advantage of it. And so now they find themselves as the dominant force. They control territory. There's no one attacking them there. And from that is where they can recruit and train people and ultimately export them to conduct these sort of attacks in Europe and beyond. And as I said, they aspire for the same thing here in the homeland.
All right, but what do you do? I mean, you're running for president. This president has said that that ISIS is contained. He says, well, I meant geographically, that they're contained in the battle in Iraq and Syria right now. You know, but what would you do? Are you going to start bombing these training camps? Are you going to start stopping them?
Yeah.
You know, okay, detail it for us, please.
Absolutely. I mean, we would need to target these camps and begin to target them. I think that we also are going to need the involvement of U.S. special operators to conduct these attacks. I believe we need to subject ISIS to high-profile, humiliating defeats, meaning special operations attacks that are filmed, basically, so we can show the world that these are not invincible people. It discourages people from joining their cause. Right now, the perception they create through the use of social media and propaganda is that they're unstoppable. Because of these attacks in Paris, they will add recruits, and they will raise money off of this. So we need to subject them to high-profile, humiliating defeats to cut off this narrative that there's some unstoppable force. But look, eventually, and I'm not saying this is something that's going to be easy to do, but Sunnis themselves, Sunni countries are going to have to defeat them ideologically and militarily, and we're going to help them, and we need to help them. But it is Sunnis themselves that must confront and defeat them because they're the ones that are going to pay the most immediate price in that region in the short term. And that means Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Jordanians are going to have to improve their capacity to take them on the ground.
So where's the center of that? Where's the big meeting that happens between the United States and Egypt and Saudi Arabia, and the pictures of that are sort of on every newspaper and website that says we are now, a World War II style real, not just on paper, coalition, but we will hunt you down and we will stop this at whatever cost.
That will not happen without American leadership. This president has chosen not to pursue that because he thinks that politically for him, it's admitting that we're re-engaged in another hostility in the Middle East. And so he's trying to do the bare minimum he can without losing the political narrative that he got us out of the Middle East and got us out of conflict. In the absence of American convening power and leadership, that coalition will never happen. And it is specifically that vacuum that Vladimir Putin has tried to step into and fill. That's the argument Vladimir Putin is making to Egypt and all these other countries, that Obama's unreliable, he's never going to bring it together, we're going to lead the anti-ISIS fight.
Should we work with Vladimir Putin on this?
The problem with working with Vladimir Putin on this is his interests in this are really not to defeat ISIS. He has two interests. Number one, to replace the U.S. as a power broker in the Middle East. Number two, to distract the world from Ukraine. And number three, to prop up Assad, which gives them a foothold in the Middle East that they haven't had in 30 years. His interest is not necessarily wiping out ISIS. Now, maybe after the plane was shot down, but their capabilities aren't. They cannot put together a coalition. They don't have the capability to do what America can do. Only America can lead that coalition. So if the Russians want to help, then they need to start targeting ISIS, but they need to change their viewpoints as far as what their goals are in the region.
All right. Senator, thank you. Very good to have you with us today.
Thank
Senator
you.
Marco Rubio on the phone with us today from Florida.